I worked a lot with standards over the years, and there's, if you look at the standards documents, you know, national and state level, there's really kind of not a very deep treatment of the nature of knowledge. And it's different from one subject area to another. And just an awareness, you know, that the knowledge is different. For example, language arts is much more procedural than other subject areas. When you're teaching writing, you're teaching a mental procedure. When you're teaching reading, you're teaching a mental procedure. And actually, they're very, very complex procedures. You know, the technical terms are called macro procedures. It's a procedure with a whole bunch of little procedures. You talk about writing, it's not just writing. There's, you know, researching, drafting, revising, and then revising. You're revising for mechanics, you're revising for subject verb agreement, you're revising for overall logic, you know, a whole bunch of things. That's real different from teaching the Bernoulli principle in science. And it has whole different implications in terms of, you know, what level of expectation we have for students, how high up in the taxonomy can they go. And actually with procedural knowledge, like writing, sometimes the highest level of expectation is they can just do it, you know, which is actually fairly low in the taxonomy. That doesn't mean you need to go higher, but I think an understanding of the nature of knowledge, the nature of content-specific knowledge, just clears up a lot for teachers. It really does. Now, it's not just meant for teachers, although it was written, you know, with teachers in mind. It's meant for curriculum developers. It's meant for people who develop assessments, you know, and people who've used the new taxonomy. It was pretty well vetted. There was actually a version before that, and then a few years afterward we came out with what we called, you know, the first one had a title, Designing a New Taxonomy. The second one was called The New Taxonomy, because we had a lot of feedback. And that first book was used a lot by curriculum developers and assessment people, and they said it clears up some problems. So, you know, it's meant to be, I hope it's very usable. There's a lot of examples. We have examples in terms of objectives and assessments probably across most content areas, you know, certainly the big ones, you know, and then maybe there's, you know, 8, 9, 10 content areas, math, science, language, arts, social studies, but also the arts and phys ed and technology and foreign languages. So there's a lot of practical things where teachers can actually, they have a chart and it'll give examples, you know, in their subject areas. But what I'm also hoping for is more of kind of a conceptual shift. And I've always done that in my work. I don't want to just present a recipe. You know, I really would like people to understand the kind of the logic underneath what's being done, the you know, the generalizations and principles. And I sometimes think that's stronger than the practical stuff. Because if you've got that, you know, then you can generate, you know, the practical stuff. So it's very much a combination of still some fairly strong beliefs and generalizations about the nature of knowledge, but then very, very many examples. I think it could revolutionize curriculum, and then along with that, instruction. I know that sounds grandiose, but that's actually the intent. Given the lack of understanding of the nature of knowledge, I think curriculums commonly suffer from, first of all, the amount of content they're asking teachers to address, and that's a whole standards issue. You just can't, it's impossible to teach in any state document all the content that's there in the time available. I'm just convinced of that. So now teachers, administrators, curriculum designers are all stuck with the problem of how do we, you know, streamline this process. Well, hopefully the new taxonomy and more specifically the newest book, Designing and Assessing Educational Objectives, will give them a roadmap as to, okay, we can do this. And it's really a matter of unpacking current standards documents, pulling out the really essential key content, and then formatting it in a way that makes it immediately useful to the classroom teacher. The skills for the 21st century, that's knowledge. Anything that you're trying to teach it's either domain of information, mental process, or psychomotor process, and a lot of subject areas, you know, cross those. It can be applied to any of those. So we've applied the new taxonomy and then the new book, the Designing and Assessing Educational Objectives, to things like, you know, participation in class, to things like working in groups, to things like responsibility. It creates the framework you can operationalize those things. And I think, particularly in that area, kind of 21st century skills, which are much more process-oriented, they suffer from a clear framework to make distinctions as to, well, is it this or is it this? So when you ask yourself, am I teaching information? Am I teaching mental process? And if you can answer that, when you're constructing these 21st century skills, well, now you've got a protocol for, okay, this is what an objective looks like, and therefore this is what an assessment looks like.